The text came in at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, and I read it 3 times before I let myself believe it. "You won't be coming with us, Mom. My husband would rather keep this one to just his side. You've already done the paying part, so honestly it's simpler this way." That was from my daughter, my own girl. 2 nights before the trip I'd been saving for, planning for, and dreaming about for the better part of 3 years. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my reading glasses slid halfway down my nose, and the only sound in the house was the furnace kicking on against the January cold, and the little tick of the clock my Emmett bought at a yard sale the summer before he passed. I had just finished tucking the last of the travel-sized sunscreen into the mesh bags I'd zoned myself, one for each of the grandchildren, their initials stitched in the corner in blue thread, because that's the color they both liked. My fingers still had tape stuck to them from wrapping the little gift bags, the ones with the shell keychains, and the note cards that said Nana was here. The phone buzzed again while I was staring at it. "Don't take it personally. It's just easier if it's his people. You understand?" I did not answer. I set the phone face down on the table, the way you'd cover something that had died. She didn't call. She didn't say thank you. She didn't even have the decency to dress it up in a kinder lie. Just a quiet little reshuffling of the family, the one I'd built with my own 2 hands, and somewhere in that reshuffling I'd been folded up and put away in a drawer. I want to be honest about something. I'd felt it coming for a long while. I'd felt it the way you feel weather in your knees before the sky ever changes. It was in the way my son-in-law would correct me in front of the kids, gentle as anything, always smiling, always. "Actually, Mom, we don't do it that way anymore." It was in the way the holidays had drifted, 1 year at a time, over to his mother's place in the city, and how I'd find out the date the afternoon before, if I found out at all. It was in the photographs. I'll get to the photographs. But my daughter, I never thought my daughter would be the one holding the pen. When she was small, she used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms and tell me she wasn't scared, she was just keeping me company. She made me a card in the 3rd grade, a stick figure me with a cape and a crown, and underneath in that wobbly pencil she'd written, "My mom is the boss of everything good." I kept that card. It's in a shoebox in the hall closet with her baby teeth and a lock of her brother's hair from before he moved out west and stopped calling. Apparently, I was no longer the boss of anything at all. I looked over at the little duffel I'd packed for myself. 2 summer dresses I hadn't had a reason to wear in years. A framed photo of Emmett I'd planned to set on the table our first night, so he'd be there with us, the way he always should have been, and a small box of wooden matches for the candle I wanted us all to light for him. Lavender? His mother grew it along the back fence when he was a boy, and he could never smell it without going soft in the eyes. I'd pictured it so many times it felt like a memory instead of a plan. All of us barefoot on the sand up on the cape, the water going that deep steel color it goes at the end of the day, the fiddle music carrying down from somebody's cottage. I'd pictured my grandson taking my hand and asking whether his grandpa liked the ocean too, and I'd tell him, "Your grandpa loved it so much. He brought me all the way out here on a bus we couldn't afford, and we ate bread and cheese for 4 days so we could stay 1 day longer." That wasn't going to happen now, because I wasn't invited to my own trip. I'd booked the house on the water near Ingonish, the one with the wide porch and the fire pit out back looking straight at the Highlands. I'd booked the flights out of Toronto to Halifax, and the rental van big enough for all 9 of us. I'd arranged the whale watching out of Pleasant Bay, the lobster supper, the drive up the Cabot Trail, broken into gentle pieces so nobody's knees would complain. I'd spent an hour on the phone making sure the house had a ground floor bedroom for my son-in-law's mother, who doesn't do stairs. And now I was a line item, a number that had done its part and could be safely removed from the spreadsheet. I sat there a long time. The furnace ran and went quiet, ran and went quiet. I didn't turn on the overhead light. I let the little glow from under the cupboards throw long shadows across the counter. I'd wiped down twice out of nervous habit. And for a while what I felt wasn't anger, and it wasn't even sadness. It was shame. That thin, aching kind of shame that comes over you when you realize you've been hoping out loud in a room where everyone could see and hoping for something you were never going to get. I thought about phoning her. I picked up the phone and I even got as far as her name on the screen. But what would I have said? That it hurt? She knew that. That she'd changed? Of course she had. Please let me come. I couldn't say that. Not after everything. There's a line a mother shouldn't cross, and begging your own child for a seat at a table you paid for is somewhere well past it. I put the phone down, and instead of calling anyone, I got up, walked into the little den that used to be Emmett's, and woke up the old laptop. It groaned like it always did. I opened the folder I'd labeled 3 years ago now, with more hope than I care to admit. East Coast. There it was. The number I'd been building toward since the week I retired from the school board office. $26,540.70. It started, I'll admit, as a jar, an old sealer jar behind the flower in the cupboard. Every time I talked myself out of something small, a coffee out, a magazine, a second pair of house slippers I didn't need, I'd fold the cash and drop it in. But I'm not a foolish woman, whatever anyone thinks of me now, and a jar loses to the cost of living every single year it sits there. So once it got to a certain weight, I took it to the credit union, and I put it where it could grow. A high-interest account first, then a couple of G's laddered so one would come due each spring. It earned its keep. My Emmett taught me that. Money's like a garden, he used to say. Leave it be, and it just sits there. Tend it, and it feeds you. 3 years I tended it. I canceled the cable and told my friends I'd finally gone and joined the modern world. I tutored grade 9 math over the computer 2 evenings a week, even when my eyes burned by 9 o'clock. I turned the furnace down to 16 at night and wore Emmett's old wool socks over my own and a toque to bed like a girl at camp. I said no to lunches out and blamed a tight month. Nobody knew about the account. Nobody knew what it was for. What was it for? A week. One good week where my family was all in one place under one roof, where the grandchildren would remember, when they were old, the summer their Nana took them to the ocean their grandfather loved. That was the whole dream. It wasn't complicated. It cost me plenty, and it wasn't complicated. Now I have to tell you about the photographs, because that's where I should have seen it, and didn't, because I didn't want to. It happened slowly, the way these things do. It started with fewer group photos. Then, at Thanksgiving 2 years back, my son-in-law lining everyone up on the front steps and saying, "All right, let's get one of just us," and me standing off to the side with the camera in my hand, realizing us didn't mean me. Then Christmas, and the matching sweaters, red with the white snowflakes, and how I only found out there'd been matching sweaters when the card came in the mail, and there they all were, color-coordinated, and me not in the picture because I hadn't known there was a picture. My daughter waved it off when I finally said something. "Oh, Mom, You hate that staged stuff. But I didn't hate it. I'd never once been asked. Harm doesn't always come in with its voice raised. Sometimes it comes in quiet. It comes as the seat that's already taken when you arrive, the plan that's already made, the story that's already been told without you in it. My son-in-law's mother got the good chair in the front row. I got. "Oh, and Nana's here too," said the way you'd mentioned that it had started to rain. But still I planned that trip. I held on to it like a rope in the dark. Because I told myself that once we were all up there together, the salt in the air, and the kids shrieking in the surf, and the fiddle going somewhere in the distance, love would rise up on its own and remind them. Remind them of who I was. Remind them of who had loved them first. That was the story I told myself, right up until 11:47 on a Tuesday. The morning after the text, I woke before it was light. Not because I had anywhere to be. I just couldn't stay asleep. I moved around the house like a ghost of myself, folding a blanket that was already folded, straightening the frames along the hallway that were already straight. Around noon, I opened my email to look for a hydro bill, and there it was instead, sitting near the top like it had been waiting for me. Final itinerary, East Coast, confirmed guests. From the travel agency. I opened it before I could talk myself out of it, and I scrolled down slow, past the flight times, and the check-in windows and the van pickup, down to the part I already knew I'd find and still wasn't ready for. 8 names. My daughter, my son-in-law, the 2 little ones, his mother, his sister's fellow, and a name I didn't even recognize, some cousin of his, I found out later. 8 seats on the plane, 8 beds in the house on the water, 8 welcome baskets, not mine, not Nana, not my own name anywhere on the page. I zoomed in the way you do, when you're sure it must be a mistake, when surely you'll be down at the bottom as guest 9, added on separate. But there was no bottom to get to. There was no separate. There was just 8, clean and final, in a booking I had made, and I had paid for, and I had built with my own hands over 3 winters of double socks. I closed the laptop the way you'd close a coffin, gently in case it broke. That evening my daughter called, not to explain. She was bright as a penny, chattering about packing cubes, and then, almost as an afterthought, she said she just wanted to make sure everything was squared away on my end, the balance and all, when the last payment would go through. "Right, Mom?" I asked her, careful and quiet, whether there was anything she needed me to bring. There was a little pause. "Bring?" she said, like it was a strange word. "Oh, no." "No, you don't need to bring a thing," I said. "I only wondered if I should pack some of those anti-nausea wristbands for the little one, since she gets carsick on the trail." And that's when it came out, still wrapped in that bright voice, but with something harder underneath it. "Mom, we've got it all handled." "Really?" "Honestly, we were thinking this might be a good chance for you to just rest. Stay home. Put your feet up for once. You've earned it." She didn't say it cruel. That's the part that took the wind out of me. She said it the way you'd talk a nervous animal back into its pen. They'd cut me out of the whole thing, and now they were going to hand it back to me as a gift, as though staying home from the trip I'd spent 3 years building was something they were doing for my sake. After she hung up, I stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the bird feeder. Emmett hung 20 years ago, empty now, swinging a little in the wind, and I wasn't shaking and I wasn't crying. I was still. Still the way the pond behind the church goes still in November, right before it turns to ice. I went to the hall closet and took down the fireproof box where I keep the papers that matter. Inside were the account documents, the ones I'd signed alone at the credit union 3 years back. I ran my finger down the page. Account holder. One name, mine. Authorized users, none. No joint owner. No cosigner. No one but me could touch $1 of it, and no one but me had ever put $1 in. I opened the banking app on my phone, and there was the account, and there was the balance, and there were the cards linked to it. 6 of them, one holding the house, one on the rental van, one on the flights, though those had already gone through and printed. 3 more feeding the drips and drabs, the excursions, the suppers, the whale-watching deposit, all of them pulling from one well. My well. And that's when I stopped feeling ashamed. I want you to understand that, somewhere between the closet and the couch, the shame just set down its bag and left, and something quieter and much harder moved into the room in its place. They hadn't forgotten me. You forget a birthday. You forget to phone. This wasn't forgetting. This was leaving me out on purpose and expecting me to be too old and too soft and too grateful for the leftovers to make a sound about it. They thought I'd stay in the corner and smile. They'd forgotten who taught them to walk. I made a cup of peppermint tea, and I sat with it until it went cold, and I let myself feel the whole of it, not just the sting but the shape of it. And for the first time in a long stretch of nights, I slept clean through till morning. I didn't decide anything in a hurry. I want that on the record, too. I'm not a woman who slams doors. The day after the phone call, I sat in Emmett's old chair by the front window, the one he called the lookout, because he could see the whole street from it. And I opened the laptop and I found the account, and I found the settings, and I found the little toggle that said freeze all outgoing transactions. Below it, in small gray letters, linked cards will be declined. No new charges can be authorized without the account holder's approval. One tap, that was all it needed. I didn't tap it. Not yet. Instead, I opened the calendar and I put a red circle on the departure day. Their flight left Toronto at 6:40 in the morning. If they got to the airport 2 hours early the way you're meant to, and the flights were already paid and printed, and nothing I could do would stop the plane itself, then the plane wasn't the point. The point was the ground. The point was the moment they landed in Halifax, tired and salty and pleased with themselves, and went to pick up the van and handed over the card, and it didn't work. And the house on the water with the balance dough at check-in on my card, and the supper reservations, and the whaleboat, but only if I let it happen. Only if I held my tongue long enough. And I wanted to be sure, because I knew, sitting there, that once you take off the mask they've handed you, the good mother, the endless well, the one who gives and never once asks what about me, you don't get to put it back on. So I gave them one more chance, just the one. I typed out a message to my daughter, soft as I could make it. Let me know if you'd like a hand with the kids' bags or some snacks for the flight. I've got those wristbands ready for the little one if she needs them. An hour went by. Then, too, I watched the little word under the message turn from delivered to read. And then nothing. No thank you. No we appreciate you. No we're sorry, Mom. Just read and silence. And that's how I knew there was nothing to fix. It wasn't a mix-up. It wasn't stress or poor timing or my son-in-law's mother getting her way. It was a family that had decided, somewhere along the line, that my love was a bill they'd already settled and my presence was an expense they'd rather not carry. I went back to the laptop. I put my finger over the toggle, and this time I pressed it. The little switch went blue. Freeze active. No confirmation would go out to anyone. No warning. No alert on anybody's phone. They'd find out the way I found out I wasn't invited, in the plainest, quietest, most undeniable way there is. I closed the laptop, I finished my tea, and I'll tell you, I felt lighter than I had in a year. Over the next 2 days, I said not one word. When my daughter posted a photo of the kids' packed suitcases lined up by the door with a row of little heart emojis, I didn't comment. When my son-in-law dropped a "We are so for ready" gang in the family group chat, I let it sit there. And when my granddaughter sent me a voice note, that little chipmunk voice going, "Nana, Nana, we're gonna see waltz," I saved it. I pressed the phone to my chest, and I said out loud to the empty kitchen, "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but somebody had to teach your mother what a person is worth." Then I opened a fresh page on the laptop, and at the top I wrote a different heading, not East Coast. This time I wrote, "The ones nobody remembers to invite." And underneath, I started a list. Marjorie, from my old church circle, whose kids hadn't been home for a Christmas in 6 years, and who spent last one alone with a turkey breast and the television. Ida, my neighbor 2 doors down, 81 and sharp as a tack, who told me once she'd never in her life stood in the ocean. Fern, widowed the same spring as me, who still sets 2 cups out every morning out of habit and can't seem to stop. Ruby, who nursed her sister through the whole long ending of it and slept in a chair beside the hospital bed for 11 weeks. Estelle, from the seniors' center, who raised 3 of her grandchildren single-handed and wasn't invited to a single one of their graduations. And Doreen, my oldest friend in the world, who drove me to every one of Emmett's chemo appointments and never once let me thank her properly. 6 women, every one of them overlooked, underestimated, used up and set down. I looked at that list for a long time, and I felt something come up in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. And it wasn't sadness. It was almost like being young again. They flew out on the Thursday. I know because my daughter posted from the gate, all of them in a row with their coffees, my son-in-law making a peace sign, his mother posed by the departures sign like it was a red carpet. The caption read, "Family Trip." And I sat at my kitchen table and drank my tea from the mug. Emmett gave me our first Christmas married, the one with the chip in the handle, and I watched the whole thing unfold, frame by frame, and I did not look away. The first message came at 9:20 their time, once they'd landed. My son-in-law, and no hello, getting a weird error on the rental. Cards declining. "Can you check the account?" I said nothing. 10 minutes. Then my daughter, "Mom? The van place says the card's not going through. Same with the deposit thing. Can you look? We're all standing here with the kids." Nothing. Then the calls started. One every few minutes at first, then back to back. Then the voicemails, and I'll tell you, I listened to the first 2, and then I couldn't anymore. Not because they hurt me, but because of what wasn't in them. "Mom, it's me. Just call me back quick." "Mom, the house is saying the balance didn't clear and they won't give us the key. What's going on?" Not one of them, not one, said I'm sorry. Not one of them asked whether I was all right, alone in the house I'd built on the day their trip left without me. Then, near noon, one voicemail came through in a different tone, lower. My son-in-law, and I could hear the wind off the harbor behind him. "Look, I don't know what you did or how, but if this is about the message, we can talk about it. Just fix the account first, and we'll talk when we're back. Fix it first, talk later. Forgiveness up front, apology on a payment plan." The resort emailed me around 1 o'clock. Not them, me, because it was my booking and my name. "We regret that the reservation could not be completed due to the payment freeze on the account. The hold has been released and no charges have been applied." As the sole account holder, no further action is required from you. We hope to welcome you another time. I read it twice, and then I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 3 years. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in ages. I put on my boots and I went for a walk in the snow. The air was that sharp, clean cold that makes your lungs feel scrubbed. A neighbor waved and asked if I had any big plans for the winter, and I said, "You know, I think I just might." And I kept walking, and I smiled the whole way to the corner and back. By the time I got home, the phone had finally gone quiet. There was one last message waiting. "Mom, if this was about what got said, then okay, maybe we handled it wrong. I don't know. It all got twisted. But the kids are here, and they're really excited, and we can still salvage the trip. Please just unlock the account. We'll sort it all out when we're home, I promise." They wanted the holiday now and the apology sometime, never. They wanted me to pay for their joy while they'd shut mine out in the cold. So no, I didn't unlock a thing. I didn't answer. And I didn't explain myself because a person shouldn't have to explain why she's decided to stop bleeding for people who brought a knife. The refunds trickled in over the next 2 days. The house, the van, the airline taxes, the whale boat, the supper deposits. One notification at a time, all of it flowing back into an account that a week before had been drained by love. It came back full, but this time, love was going to keep its eyes open. I called them, my 6, one by one, and every call went the same. A careful hello, then a long silence when they understood what I was saying, then that word, always the same word. Why? Why me? And I told each of them the same thing. Because somebody should have a long time ago. Because you matter, and it's high time somebody with a checkbook agreed. I booked it all under my own name this time. One house on the water near Ingonish, 6 bedrooms, 7 nights, 6 seats on the flight to Halifax, no family trip captions, no matching sweaters. Just 6 women who'd spent their whole lives being the ones who stayed behind, going somewhere, finally, together. And I took Emmett with me. I had that photograph of him enlarged, the one where he's laughing with his head thrown back, and the sun caught in his hair. And I had it framed, not in anything fancy, just soft walnut that goes darker and finer with age, the way the good things do. I wrapped it in a bath towel, and I laid it in my suitcase like it was made of glass. When we walked into that house, when the salt air came in through the screen door, before we'd even set our bags down, I carried him straight to the long table in the center of the room, and I stood him up at the head of it, and not one of those women asked me to move him. Not one of them thought it was strange. Fern just came over and touched the frame and said, "There he is," and that was all. We had 7 days. I'll not be able to give you the whole of them, because some of it belongs only to us now. But I can tell you the shape. Ida stood in the North Atlantic for the first time in her 81 years and shrieked at the cold of it, and then wouldn't come out, and we had to bribe her back to shore with tea. Ruby learned she could laugh again, and it startled her the first time it happened, like she'd found a $5 bill in an old coat. Marjorie cooked us a chowder one night that could have brought a person to tears, and Estelle told stories about her grandchildren without any of the bitterness she was entitled to, just the love. We drove the Cabot Trail in pieces, slow, stopping wherever a lookout caught our eye. We went to a sealid in a little hall, and Doreen, who I have known for 40 years, got up and danced with a fisherman twice her size, and I never in my life saw her like that. Every evening we lit 1 candle beside Emmett's photo. 6 nights, 6 candles, and each woman, when it was her turn, said one thing she wished somebody had told her when she was 30. You don't have to earn your rest. You're allowed to take up space. Being needed and being loved are not the same thing. Your story is worth telling out loud. You were never a burden. You were never once invisible. The 7th candle I saved for the last night. Lavender. We walked down to the water after supper, all 6 of us, barefoot in the cold sand with our cardigans pulled tight. The stars out there are close enough to touch. The tide came in soft around our ankles and pulled at the sand under our feet, gentle, insistent, like it was trying to tell us something. I set Emmett's photo on a flat stone, and I struck the match, and my hands were steady, and I lit the wick and watched the little flame take hold and settle. Fern reached over and took my hand. I didn't think I'd feel this again, she said, so quiet I almost lost it under the sound of the waves. Like I mattered to somebody. And she looked at me with the firelight moving on her face, and she said, and I sure didn't expect it to come from someone who'd just had her own heart broke clean in two. I didn't say anything back. I just held her hand a bit tighter, and we watched the candle burn down toward the sea. The email came 3 days after we got home. I'd just walked in from the credit union, where I'd gone to put what was left of the fund back where it could grow, and I was still finding sand in the seams of my suitcase when I opened the laptop, and there it was. From my daughter this time. Clearing the air, the subject line said. Hi, Mom. So we're back. It wasn't really the trip we'd hoped for, obviously. A lot of it went sideways, and I guess some of that's on us. I'm not saying it was all handled perfectly. Maybe things could have been communicated better. My husband says hi, by the way. He was really stressed, and he didn't mean for it to come across the way it did. You know how he gets about wanting things a certain way. Anyway, we've been thinking, maybe we weren't totally fair. But we're home now, and honestly, we're in a bit of a spot, money-wise, because we had to put a bunch of stuff on the credit card down there when everything fell through, and it's kind of snowballing. So I wanted to ask, if you're able, whether you might consider sending back the deposit we'd put toward the trip, or even part of it. I know you're probably still hurt, but we're still family. Let me know. I read it once. Then I read it again, and a third time, and every time my eye caught on the same words and stuck there. The deposit we'd put toward the trip. This deposit they'd put toward the trip. As though there had ever been a we. As though a single one of those dollars had come from anywhere but a jar behind my flower, and 3 winters of turning down the furnace. There was no we, there never had been. There was one woman and one account and one signature on one line, and the only thing they'd ever deposited was the certainty that I would pay and stay quiet and be grateful just to be allowed to hover at the edge of the photo. I opened the sent folder and I looked at every payment, every one of them, and there was my name on all of it. And they were asking me, now, to hand over my own money so they could cover the cost of the choices they'd made when they cut me loose. It would almost have been funny, if it weren't so familiar, because that's what a mother does, isn't it? Pays the bill and swallows the insult, holds the hurt and hands over the check, gets cropped out of the picture, and then buys the frame. I sat there a good long while, with the cursor blinking. I thought about that house on the water, the 6 of us around the table, the chowder, Emmett laughing in his walnut frame. No demands out there, no conditions. Just people who were glad, plainly and simply glad, that the others were in the room. Then I looked back at the screen, at the excuses lined up neat as fence posts, at my son-in-law's stress, offered up like an explanation, at the vague little suggestion that if I were the bigger person I'd understand. But understanding isn't the same as surrender, and love without respect isn't love. It's just a bill somebody hopes you'll keep paying. I moved the cursor over reply. I held it there, and then I closed the laptop, and I got up, and I made myself a pot of tea, and I let the whole matter go out with the steam. Because here's a thing I know now that I didn't know 2 nights before a trip that left without me. If a person has to sit and explain to you why she won't fund the people who left her behind, then the person asking was never owed the explanation in the first place. I went and stood at the kitchen window. The bird feeder was swinging out there, empty still, and I thought, well, I'll fill that this week. A chickadee came and sat on the rail and looked at me, cocked its little head, and flew off again, and somewhere down the street a snowblower started up. And it was, all things considered, an ordinary and a good afternoon. I never did get my apology. I want to be honest about that, because I think you might be waiting for it the way I once would have. It never came. Not a real one, and I found, to my own great surprise, that I stopped needing it somewhere out on that cold sand with the tide pulling at my feet and 6 good women beside me, and my husband's face lit up in the candlelight. I used to think family was the people you were given. I spent 60-odd years believing that, and paying for it, and folding myself smaller and smaller to fit the room they'd allotted me. I don't believe it anymore. Family is the people who are glad you walked in the door. It's the ones who set your husband's photo at the head of the table without being asked. It's the ones walking the same way you're walking, who fall into step beside you and stay. I wasn't left behind. That's the thing I finally understand. All that time I thought I'd been left behind, and I hadn't been, not really. I'd just been walking a little ahead, waiting for the ones who were coming my way to catch up. And when they did, when they did, we went straight down to the water together, and we stood in the cold of it, and not one of us looked back.